Started for today. Thank you all for joining. I am going to be going over salary cap and how it relates to effort reporting. We have a lot of materials out there. We've done a few trainings, and so I'm hoping this is going to kind of be a quick 30-minute overview of some things that maybe we're missing or filling in the gaps on those. This salary cap cannot be covered in 30 minutes, I will say. This is not intended to be, now you've had your training on salary cap. This is really to try to help answer, and at the end we'll also have Q&A so you can ask questions, because there is a lot to salary cap and just sort of, filling in and filling in any gaps that may be out there. So I'll go ahead and let's see. I am trying to advance my slides. There we go. I think it's working. All right, so today's agenda, I'll just be going over various tools and resources that are available in ECC to help identify when salary cap is present, and various tools that we have out there, as well as existing recordings, job aids that can also help. So what I'll get started with is we have a listing of all sponsor salary caps that are input into ECC. That is available for you to view. So that way, if you're not sure on what sponsors have salary caps, that is a collective list. I will say the list does not, or it does include folks that maybe we don't have funding from currently. So there may not be awards out there. Those are all the ones that we identified. So if you happen to notice any that you believe, we have a sponsor, we have some existing awards, and you don't see a cap listed there, you think there should be, please reach out to me or my team, and we can definitely investigate. And if it needs to get added, we will add that. But where you can find that list is you can go through ECC and you can click on the links tab, and that's going to take you to the effort calculators, and it's going to be in the last tab. So this effort calculator is linked in ECC as well as on our main effort reporting website. So over to the right, you see resources updated recently, and then it's under that section. So it's the same calculator in both places, but you can get it from different locations. So then on the first half of the screen, or the top half, this is just sort of a snippet of that. Once you go to that calculator, on that last tab, you'll see that there is a salary caps tab, and that's where you'll find all the sponsors and what their caps are. What I will say, and I can't recall if I point this out, and then also within this calculator, this book, is the salary cap calculator. So down on the second half, or the bottom half of the screen, is just a snippet of what is in the salary cap calculator. All the yellow highlighted boxes in that calculator are things that you're going to have to input. Everything else is not data enterable. There are formulas and calculations, and this worksheet or this workbook is going to help you figure out, what's over the cap, whether you're looking at it on a monthly basis in Banner, and that's what they're getting paid out in Banner, versus what are they actually earning if they're one of those 9/12 folks, where they're working 9 months but getting paid over 12 months. So that can also cause some confusion. So this calculator was created to help with that. Something I do want to mention, because I think I mentioned it later on. So I know this came up last year. So up at the top, in the top half where we have the salary cap list, that is one of our most common sponsor salary caps, is the HHS salary cap. That's what's listed up there. Everything else below is, going specific down to the agency level, and, which cap they use, as well as, non-federal sponsors. So that list will be collective. That top sort of like brownish gray shaded areas, just showing you all of the historical calendar year. It's basically calendar years when they change their salary cap rate. And so for ECC and for effort reporting, for those of you that have folks that are over the cap and dealt with salary cap before, we're dealing with effort reporting on an academic year basis. So that is not a clean calendar year. So we have to, or the system sort of calculates out and blends the rates. So that is true for some of the other sponsors as well that blend rates. And usually it's because they are doing them based on roughly calendar year, or they change every calendar year. So in reality, this blended rate is not I'll go into that later, I guess, but the blended rate is what you're going to see in the system. That is not a true, HHS rate. It is just the way that the system is blending it to show those two rates that were in effect during the year. And I'll speak a little bit more to that and the nuances of how that shows up. But so in case those of you are looking, you're saying, I don't recognize 218,424.02. That's because it's the blended rate. We do the calculation is in that spreadsheet as well. So you see how we're arriving at that. It does go down to the day level. And this year, apparently there are 366 days in the year. So that calculation is taking that into account. So that's where you're going to go if you have questions about what sponsors are in there. And then we also have this calculator available, a salary cap calculator. We have a recording that goes over all three types of the calculators. And there is like a little description in YouTube, which is where the video is posted, that tells you the timing of each of those. So if you want to just jump to the salary cap calculator, it tells you what time that begins, and you don't have to listen to the whole video. The whole video, I think, is about 30 minutes. So that will be helpful if you are just trying to jump to one or the other. And then we also have another way to identify in the system is for any faculty or those with an effort statement. And I say faculty loosely because I think we've given caveats before that we don't, for purposes of effort reporting, those faculty that are possibly hourly or at any other university other than UIC, like UIS or UIUC, those folks are defaulting to project statements. So that's kind of a loose term for the purposes of effort reporting. But anybody with an effort statement, if they are, let me see, hold on, I think it's, okay. Anybody, and I think it's on the next screen, anyone who is over that cap, they're going to show a flag here. Or flag, a tag, I'm not sure what we want to call it, but you'll see it in red and with a question mark. So if you hover, so I identified if you hover your cursor over that icon or picture or that wording, you're going to get that blue box right in the middle. And that's going to show you some of the calculations, the cap that's being applied, the individual's IBS, and then it will be showing you two different ways to determine the effort. So if this first box is saying by payroll dollars, it's saying if the dollars that are charged are correct, then this is how much additional cost share that you're going to have to recognize. So right now they have 7.02% in cost share, or sorry, and salary directly charged. The system is saying we've flagged this person as over the cap. We've done the calculations for you. 3.02% should be recognized as cost share, and 10.04% is what should be recognized as total effort, as the effort that is going to be certified. Now, the second computation is saying if 7.02% really should be what what they should be certifying and not necessarily the dollars, they're saying you should only be charging 4.91% of the payroll to this grant 2.11 should be cost shared, and then total certified effort should be 7.02. So in that scenario, this effort coordinator or business manager would need to remove or take off salary because currently 7.02% is being charged. It's a lot of numbers, a lot to look at, but that is essentially how that little box works. It's kind of showing you the components that go into the calculations. I would say those two are the most common options. It's either, what's being charged, the dollars are correct, or the effort is correct, and that's helping you figure out, are you doing labor distribution to take off salary, or do you just need to recognize cost share to meet that total effort commitment? Now, the other box that can occur if you click on that icon. So the blue box comes up if you hover over it. The white and red box to the right comes up if you click it. That actually comes up in a separate tab. And this is essentially has the same information. So if you see in that like first box, it says by payroll, it's giving you the same options. If 7.02% of payroll is correct, 3.02% of cost share needs to be recognized, and computed effort and certified effort have to be the same, and they would be 10.04%. And then the line below that is saying the second option that we saw in blue, if the computed effort or if the effort that is being shown with payroll, that 7.02% is correct, then they need to back off payroll to 4.91, recognize cost share at 2.11, and in total, then that's how you can certify 7.02% for this person because they are over the cap. I want to point out that there's also the section right below it where it says flex calc. So basically, if neither of those options are correct, right? Maybe payroll is completely off. We want to certify, 5%, then that's what that section is for. And I think I have a screenshot of that on the next page. But those are the types of flags that come up in ECC to help identify these folks, regardless of sponsor. As long as we have that sponsor in our list that I mentioned, these folks should be coming up only if they're being flagged as over the cap. So you're not going to see that if this person is not meeting the cap. And I will talk about this highlighting in the middle that is very, very important. ECC does not currently flag anyone less than 1.0 FTE that is under the sponsor's 1.0 FTE cap, or those on a project statement. So project statements, there is not an equivalent cap, mainly because, some of those folks are hourly, and so we have to look at it in a different way. We are trying to work with the vendor to, make that an option in the future. That didn't happen this year or this time around. But I do want to note that. So something else to kind of point out is that so in the system, we showed that there's a blended rate, right, for HHS. It's that 218,424. That is not, like I said, that's not a true rate, right? It's a blended rate that ECC is calculating based on the two rates in effect at the time. But that is what it's using for the cap amount. So say somebody was only here through December 2023, and say they earned 215,000, right? It would be over that FY, or I don't know, calendar year 2023 cap, but it's not over the blended cap. So it's not going to be flagged in the system. And I guess that's kind of a bad example because the system is also going to try to account for that person only working a half a year. But I think my point is that it's using the $218,000 as a benchmark. If this person is over this amount, then that's when it's going to start flagging them, and then take into account the annualized FTE as well. Anybody less than 1.0 FTE, it's not able to recognize that at this time. So those folks, we would ask you to pay special close attention to, especially if you feel like they're earning a higher amount of pay, maybe just not working 1.0 FTE, so it's not as obvious. We will be doing other checks, but unfortunately, that's not something that's built into the system right now. We are working on that as well. So I would say use extreme caution with folks under 1.0 FTE that you think may be earning at a rate that would exceed the cap if they were 1.0 FTE. So non-faculty, so I mentioned those folks, they're generally going to be on a project statement. We don't have the flag for them. It's, we have a mixed bag of folks. Some folks are hourly, some people do have FTEs. Maybe they have a combination of both. So the system and our calculations cannot, handle that variance. And so right now that is really something that's done, behind the scenes by our office and, by you as the business manager to keep an eye out on what I typically would say is the easiest way. A lot of those folks that are on the project statements, you can get down to their hourly rate of pay. And sometimes that's easier than trying to, go through all their various appointments if you can see their hourly rate of pay and see if that exceeds that any sponsor's caps. But we are working to try to also make a flag or somehow identify those potential folks on the project statements. Okay, so like I mentioned on the other slide, you saw a snippet of this type of section. I added these little yellow highlights or boxes so you know what areas I wanted to talk about in there. But this is still a snippet from the other page, but just showing that you can use that bottom section where it says Flex Calc. So if basically the two ways that ECC defaults and shows you, okay, effort is, either based on the payroll dollars or the effort, or, we're assuming the effort is correct and therefore we're going to back into the dollars. If neither of those are right, you can still use this calculator to put in, okay, I know 5% of the payroll is right. It's going to show you that calculation. Or if you know that 5% effort should be certified, it's going to back into the payroll and the cost share and what needs to be entered in there. And then to the right, they give you the dollars down to the pennies. So this page is helpful, but I have a caveat. Use when, okay, these scenarios need to be in place for you in order for you to use this reliably. I did want to point out too, there's this little highlighted section up at the top above those calculation sections that says 30.08% equals percent of grant effort supported by the institution and 69.92. Oh, okay. I have another slide on this. It'll go into that. So I'll go into that later, but, or on the next slide. What I wanted to mention about this calculator is you want to make sure that when the annualized FTE in ECC is correct. And we have some tool or we have a report that you can run to sort of verify that. That is new this year, but that is very important. Otherwise, this calculator is not going to be reliable. We are going to be able to send updates. I think we're going to do it on a weekly basis. If you find that the FTE that's in ECC is incorrect, then we can update that, but just know it's not, we're doing it on a weekly basis. And I'm sure if we needed to, we could probably do it more frequently, but we are trying to limit that. So definitely take a look at the annualized FTE after I show you how you can do that. And let us know if you think something is incorrect. So that has to be correct. You also use it when you know that payroll should be direct charge. If you know the percentage, if you know the effort and you know the dollars. So, when people are entering in or in that bottom section, it says, oh, I know it's 5%. Okay. Hopefully you have used the effort calculator to determine that it's 5% for the AY. We are not entering that in based on just dollars charged. You should be determining, what their effort is. You get that from the FTE calculator and you enter that in. So you need to know what the effort is before you can start using this calculator. And I also have a slide for that later on to kind of talk about that. if the sponsor has a blended cap and effort did not fluctuate during the AY. So this is when you can use the calculator, okay? If the sponsor has a blended cap and effort fluctuated throughout the year, or maybe they only worked, you know, in calendar year 23 on that award, the calculator is not going to calculate correctly. It assumes a blended rate. It does not identify that, oh, this grant ended December 31st, 2023, therefore I'm only going to use the 2023 cap. It does not recognize that. So that is something important to keep in mind when calculating out. This really is made for, you know, consistent effort across the life of the award, and that is the full, you know, AY 2024, you know, not that it like started later or ended earlier. Those are all going to affect the dollars, and this is not going to be exact. Okay, so the other slide that I was mentioning, so I just kind of broke out some of these sections. I was noting that in this highlighted section above, that is essentially the ratio. This is very helpful, assuming all of those other factors are met, right, on the other slide, that, you know, we know the effort, et cetera, et cetera. Then this is extremely helpful because this is your ratio that you're going to use. That in this scenario, this individual is charging the sponsor 69.92% of their effort, and 30.08% of their effort is always going to be cost share. So if their effort percent is 5 on the grant, you're going to multiply those ratios to determine what percentage of that 5% is supposed to be cost shared and is supposed to be direct charge. So that is going to be consistent for any award, any effort, as long as it's that same, you know, sponsors cap. You know, it's assuming that it's like, you know, start and end also of the award, or within the period, and you might have to adjust for that. But that is helpful to know the ratio there for that sponsor. The second section on this page is the one that I mentioned that is shown on the initial page. If you hover over that, the icon or the, you know, question mark cap label, this is automatically what, you know, the system's saying based on the payroll, based on what's currently charged in ECC. You're going to certify effort based on, you know, the percentage or by the payroll. And then the second section is if neither of those options are correct, there's definitely a labor redistribution involved. Then you have that bottom section where you can enter it in. It's going to help you determine what needs to be charged, direct charge, and recognized as cost share. So just keep in mind that this will, if that happens, you cannot just complete it in here and not do it in Banner. You do need to complete the, you know, PZA res. You need to do the labor redistribution in Banner. The goal is to have the effort reporting system reflect exactly what it's supposed to be. So I would say don't forget to go through and do the labor redistribution. Otherwise, that's going to prompt an issue later on down the road if it ends up getting certified like that. And then we're going to have to reopen it anyways and have it recertified. So just if you do identify times that or situations where labor redistributions are needed and what's not in there is not correct, do it in Banner as soon as possible. It's about a 2-day lag, but it's much quicker than, you know, our old system. So I just want to highlight that. So how can you find the annualized FTE? So there is a report. It was made just available today. We've had this report internally since last year, but you guys will need it to help, you know, determine if those caps, the calculators are working, because then it causes another host of issues. Because once you end up entering in ECC and say, okay, here's the cost share, here's this, the system, if you calculate it and say the system is using we have the wrong annualized FTE, the system may still code it as the flag has not been met. Because once the flag has been met, that question mark salary cap red font turns to green. And that's when you know, okay, I've met this obligation. Sometimes that, isn't always going to work, like I mentioned with those caveats and what needs to be in place for that cap to work, for the cap calculator to work. So as long as there's explanations for that, I wouldn't worry about it being in red as long as you have an explanation, a justification as to why the flag isn't turning to green. But back to this annualized report. This is where you can get it. You go to reports, reporting, UIC custom reports. It does not say limited, but it says annualized FTE values for each employee run by FY. You're going to put in the start of the academic year. And then you're going to get a report that looks something like this. You're going to go listing of the employees. You're going to get departments, department numbers, the business manager, the annualized FTE that is in ECC as of that date. So if we're updating at the end of this week, you might see something different next week for someone. We don't expect to do a lot of changes after this. We do feel like we did some cleanup, but definitely there are just the nature of how the banner data is entered, there are going to be some that are incorrect. And so if you notice that, let us know and we'll help to update it. So that report is available to you. It's going to have everyone on it. So even if they're not your individual, so you may need to export it and then you can filter and sort as you need it. So that is a tool out there. Just a reminder to use the effort calculators first. So back to my slide here, you need to know, you can use this calculator, but you need to know what the effort is on the project before you can even begin to use it. And so that goes back to using the effort calculators. So we have a basic calculator. You want to use that calculator. If the FTE did not change, but the effort can change on the grant throughout the year. It's the key part is their FTE. Did their FTE change? And you could still use the basic calculator if they're 9/9 and they just, like they didn't work those 3 months, but their effort, like it was consistent during their period here at the university. So that first calculator will work. But then the FTE change calculators for those that had fluctuations during the year, and they could also have changes in effort, but the FTE change calculator is really for those that had changes throughout the year. They're just their total FTE. So make sure that you're clear on effort versus FTE. I think sometimes they are used interchangeably by folks, but when we say effort, we mean effort on the grant. FTE is universal. It's at the university, whether they're working on sponsored or non-sponsored projects. So know that distinction. And then the salary cap, we have a separate calculator, which was on slide 4. I'm not going into the cap calculator because that would at least be a 30-minute conversation in itself or close to it. But there is a recording for all of these on, a basic way to use these and what you're inputting, and that is up on our website. So I just want to add some caution. Some of these I mentioned before, but they're worth mentioning again. Blended caps assume an even rate of pay throughout the whole year. So if your individual also changed their rate of pay, maybe they had some different jobs, they received a 0 FTE admin appointment, but maybe it was partway through the year or different rate of pay, that blended cap calculator is not going to work. It's not going to be accurate. So you may need to use the salary cap calculator and sort of break it out based on each, period of different rates of pay, different cap periods by the sponsor. So that's something else to keep in mind. It also assumes that effort is the same throughout the year. We only have a spot to put in the effort in ECC 1% of effort, right? Like we can only put in one thing for payroll, one thing for cost share, when in reality, an individual may have fluctuated throughout the year. You know, one month it's 10, another month it's 5. So we use the calculators, like I showed on the prior slide, to help us get to that one number that is going to be entered. So obviously that can change, right? If they're 10% during 2023 and 5% during 2024, two different caps are in effect. And so that's going to change the mix and the actual dollars that can be charged. The system does not know that. The system is just going to see maybe the average of the two, maybe it's 7 or 8% or something like that. And it's just going to apply 7 or 8% to that blended cap, which is not accurate. It would not be the true dollars that can or can't be charged. So I want to just caution that. You know, making sure that the IBS is correct, it looks correct to you. If you think it is incorrect, please reach out to us and we can double check. Please keep in mind, IBS is not the same as all of their pay, has to meet certain requirements. There are certain earn codes that we do not include. And just based on the definition of IBS in our policies. So something to keep in mind. There is a payroll report in ECC that you can run to see what's being pulled in. But we would think that you hopefully have some sort of payroll report that you can run that you can kind of compare to and kind of reconcile discrepancies. But if you have questions on that, let us know, because that will throw off your calculations for salary cap, as well as if you think the annualized FTE are off, which we have that report available for you. And I have a slide here to give you like a basic calculation of how to calculate an annualized FTE. I know I've gotten questions like that. You know, also knowing when the effort was worked is also important when to apply the cap. Like I said, if they, you know, worked it all in the summer, then only the calendar year 2024 salary cap, if it's a blended cap or sponsor cap, then only that salary cap is applicable, not the blended rate. So they actually can cost share less. So knowing you know, when effort was worked is important. You know, review your project statements very closely, especially those that you think might be exceeding the hourly rate of pay. So basically you're going to take that sponsor's rate, divide it and take the annual 1.0 FTE rate and divide it by 2080 hours to get the rate of pay. And then also you could compare that to ECC, or sorry, Banner. And, you know, don't forget, if somebody has multiple appointments at one time, if they're working those, you know, say 2 appointments at one time, you need to add both the hourly rates of pay to get to that total for that period. So that's how we would do that. That is something we are doing behind the scenes and later on, and hopefully that will be built in. But we also ask that you keep an eye out on that, especially if there was somebody we contacted you about on last year's report. Chances are they're probably still over the cap. So pay close attention to those folks. Keep in mind also, folks that are 9/12, I think a lot of times we have in our brain, oh, they're full-time, they're 1.0 FTE, but they're 9/12. They are not a 1.0, they are 0.75 unless they have summer work. So just, you know, keeping that in mind, like that's, you know, and you may see that on your annualized FTE report, and that'll hopefully ring a bell. I'm not going to go through this calculation unless I do want to stop. It's 2:35 for the most part, and see if we have questions. It can be on salary cap. It doesn't have to be. If you guys want me to go through this example, I can. And I'll just, I guess, stop there and see if we have any questions.